Hello. I don't know if I'm live. I hope I'm live. I can see that we're telling my followers. I sound like a guru. Can you all see me? Wave. Okay, well that works. Can you all hear me? That's really, really good. Thank you. Okay, you're all here. Brilliant. Robbie Honey. Hello, Robbie Honey. All the way from Africa. I'm very glad to see you all. Apparently what I should do is talk for a few minutes before I make anything or do anything so that you can all gather, as it were. So I want to wave again. Gosh, a lot of requests for waving. Do I not normally wave? So today I've been asked and very happily accepted by Garden Day UK, which is on the 10th of May, to make a floral crown. And I really wanted to make something that was accessible, that was easy, that isn't intimidating. So I've picked stuff in my garden, and I'm lucky to have a garden, I do know that. So I've picked lots of weeds as well because A, we have those in the garden, and B, they're more accessible. I can't imagine anybody objecting to you stealing some weeds out of their garden or out of hedgerows. I've got coffee as well. So, I'm going to start. I have no wires or equipment with me because I'm in the countryside in lockdown. And that was a bit of an interesting challenge. It made me think, how do you actually make flower crowns? And I can remember years and years ago, I was in Egypt and I was in the British Museum, and they have some of the funerary flowers from Tutankhamun's tomb and other tombs, and they were stitched. You should Google it online. Actually, the most extraordinary collars to wear on the mummies, and extraordinary things, and they were sewn together. So I have come up with an idea to make a crown that just happens to be therefore fully degradable, biodegradable. You can throw it on the compost heap, hopefully, not as soon as you've made it. And it's all based on a frame, because normally you would use a circle of wire. I've got here a circle, well, it's not quite a circle because heads are not circular. I've made this by twisting together some old clematis vine. You could use ivy, you could use willow. The other thing that I thought you could use, because I've just seen some, is some of this jasmine, which again, literally what I did was I wound it together like this. Then I found out what size my head was, which was a bit of a shock, like that, and kept on winding so that it became a circle. I didn't even need to tie it off, it just sort of stayed that way. So mine, as I say, is made out of clematis vine, and there it is. I've made it that it fits on my head snugly, because the thing is, when you've made the flower crown, what you don't want is for it to be sitting on your eyes or falling down over your ears, which has happened to certain flower crowns I've made in my past. So that's the basis. I also thought, because of what's going on at the moment, how could I make this flower crown more of the times, to reflect what's going on? And so I have chosen things that are symbolic and meaningful in the language of flowers. Gosh, gust of wind, nearly blew us all over there. It's a very odd day. Light changes, wind changes. Anyway, I am trying to do something that is a bit meaningful, and I'll talk through the meanings of each thing as I do it. And the first thing I want you to do is get some foliages. Now, I've got things like box because I've got lots of it, and what I'm doing is taking off the bottom leaves so that I've got something with a stem. Whatever size you make your pieces, if you make your pieces that size, basically that's the size your headdress is going to be when it's finished. If you make them that size, that's the size it's going to be. It's quite simple, but some people get a bit carried away and you end up with very enormous headdresses, which I think are great fun, and if that's what you want, get carried away, go for it. I think I just don't want one as big as that, so I've made ones. My pieces are all a bit more manageable, with a few whippy pieces. Now, as any of you who follow me will know, foliage is very important to what I do. I feel that foliage gives a sense of the place it's in. I feel foliage gives a sense of season. And I also think when you look at a garden, unless you go to Keukenhof in the Netherlands, you see green, you see trees, you see shrubs. You don't just see flowers. And so I feel foliage is the thing that really anchors it to the garden. And I feel, as you all know, that sometimes floristry has forgotten gardens. So that's why when I was asked to do this thing in Garden Day, I was so keen. I think that's the roots. That's where we need to get back to. And I think celebrating the gardens in any shape or form is a really good thing. And every person who does flowers should be celebrating the garden, whether they have it or not. They just need to get in touch with gardens. By the way, I'm not wearing sunglasses. My spectacles react to light, so I can't control it. So this is my frame. I am using, of course I am, biodegradable garden twine. And what I'm doing, I'm going to put a nice firm knot to start off with, like this. And then, just to make life easier, I'm going to cut off a piece of string, about that length. If you leave it still on the roll, what I'm doing next is quite difficult, I have discovered, because I did a trial run. So, what I've got, some I prepared earlier, I have got sage. Now sage, in the language of flowers, symbolises a long and healthy life. And that's because sage was the only antiseptic that people had. Our forefathers didn't have a lot in the way of medicine. Plants and flowers gave them so much that they needed. Sage was an antiseptic. If your child cut itself, you rubbed sage in the wound in the hope that it wouldn't get infected, because infection was, well, led to death, basically. Can't put that any nicer. So at the moment, I wish you all a long and healthy life. So I put sage in my crown. I've got box. Box symbolises stoicism, and especially stoicism in friendship. And that's because you can cut box any number of times and it comes back, just like a good friendship. So stoicism is what we all need at the moment. I also prepared earlier, like a good old Blue Peter film, I have prepared, this could all go wrong, there we go, I've prepared some rosemary. Rosemary symbolises remembrance, and that's in memory of the people who have died at the moment. And I would urge you all to put a sprig of rosemary, if you make a floral crown, in your crowns on Sunday the 10th, just so that we remember. And it's not remembering in a morbid way. Actually, it was a thing the Greeks used. The ancient Greeks used rosemary because they realised it increases blood supply, and modern science has proven that. And they used to wear wreaths of rosemary. Students wore them to increase the blood supply to their brains, they thought. It didn't really, but that's where the whole rosemary and remembrance thing came. I have also got a few stems of Daphne, which I found in the garden. And Daphne, in the language of flowers, says, I will remain constant. And I think our NHS is absolutely deserving of Daphne, because it's done such an amazing job. I'll talk about other things as I use them. So this is my technique. I quite like doing things in clumps of the same ingredient. Some people like to mix it. I quite like the idea of clumps. So what I'm doing is making a little bunch like that and putting it on my crown, and then putting the string around and back and through. It's like sewing. Not that I could be an expert sewer, but I'm pulling tight. So that is attached. Then move on slightly. I'm going to put a bit of box in. Box for stoicism. You have to keep two things in mind. You have to keep moving, and you have to keep moving in the same direction. Otherwise you end up with a tied bunch. And that's something that you have to remember. So round, back and through, and pull. I showed it a close up at the back, you might be able to see we've got little sort of stitches holding it together. Now I found this is the best way without wire to actually secure it, because if you just keep going with the string, you'll find the string gets loose very quickly and you have to keep a real grip of it, which is very hard to do when you've got life to lead. Rosemary. Now you could actually, thinking about it, do a completely green floral crown by going to the greengrocer and buying a few packets of herbs. I think that's essential travel, but I've also got a few flowers. So what I've got, all from the garden again, because today is May Day, I've got some lily of the valley. I couldn't resist it. In the language of flowers, lily of the valley symbolizes the return of happiness. So I really thought that might be a good one for today. We need happiness to return. And I'm very much thinking of, this windy day, thinking of the National Health Service, who really deserve a return of happiness. I'm just going to put, so that I protect the stems of the lily of the valley, I'm just going to put a little bit of box in there, so that I don't crush the stems when I put the string round. Again, round, through, and tie. So I've got a little bit of lily of the valley there. As I say, you don't have to, I'm going to do that twice actually. You don't have to have flowers in this. So when you get to about that much string left, what I do is I attach another piece. I find this is easier than working with a very long piece of string, because that is incredibly difficult to tie, to fold around easily. So I'm going to cut another length of string. I think now a bit more rosemary. There's no rhyme or reason to that. You know, you don't have to get it right. There isn't a right, and there is no wrong with these. And especially when you think that floral crowns were made from time immemorial. The ancient Egyptians, the ancient Romans, the ancient Greeks, they made these in ways similar to what we're doing now, because that's all they had. And they made them to celebrate. They made them for a day. They weren't perfect. If I were making it for a big wedding, I would probably want it to be a bit more perfect, because I'd be worried about it lasting for photographs. So, going around twice there. And every now and again, if you can, without cutting your finger off, if you can cut off the bits of stems, that's not a bad thing. So there you go. It's already obviously coming together. Some more rosemary. You can leave some a bit longer, and then that gives you just a bit of looseness, wildness. I mean, I could have put tulips in this, but I just really like the idea that it had a bit of symbolism, that it had a feeling of this time. And you know, we can't pretend that everything is right. We can sit in the garden and we can celebrate the garden, and we can get in touch with nature, and we can remember that there are people who are working. So this is for them. I'm also going to put in it, it's going to smell interesting, some wild garlic. Now, in the language of flowers, remember the language of flowers was something of the 19th century especially, but its meanings went back thousands of years. Think of the wonderful novels about vampires at that time. Garlic, in the language of flowers, symbolizes protection and courage, because of course you needed it if there were going to be vampires about. So I'm going to put some wild garlic, and we all need protection and we all need courage at the moment. And again, I'm going to put a tiny bit of box foliage just where I'm about to tie it, so that it protects the protection. And then I'm going to put a bit more rosemary. There is, as I say, there isn't a right way, there isn't a wrong way. You'll do yours differently from mine, and that's exactly what it should be. But I do think this sewing method, again, I'll just try to show you the back, it really helps. It really gives you a sense that it's not going to fall apart, and I think that's a good thing, especially if it's the first time you've ever made a floral crown. And this is the basic method of making Christmas wreaths as well, so you'll be all set up for Christmas. And I'm going to put also in this, I've got, to be controversial, some dandelions. Now, dandelions, if you think of a dandelion, what do you remember? You take a dandelion and you go, and you make a wish. In the language of flowers, they symbolize a wish come true. And the wish we all have at the moment is for health and for increased confidence that things are going to be over quite soon. So a few dandelions is a good thing, I think. And if you wet the bed tonight, I apologise. They also last quite well, I've discovered. I'd never have known that. Again, I'm just going to cut off some of the stems so that there's not a weight behind it. That was not my hand, that's our glamorous anonymous assistant. More rosemary. It's turned out to be actually a blue, white and yellow. Interesting, colours of the NHS really. Didn't think of that when I started, but there you go. It's funny that sometimes things just really turn out the way they're supposed to if you let them. So I'm going to put on a bit more string on my I'm getting very windy, apologies. I know this seems like a fiddle putting the string in bits, but I tell you, if you try to do it with one big length of string, there's an awful lot to deal with. And I think I found it too tricky, but you all might be much more dexterous. The nice thing about this method is that you can be sure that it's not going to slip off your head in bits. I'm going to put another one on that. I always wonder about doing these live, that people will get bored, so I'm sorry if you're bored. I think, oh, more lily of the valley. Normally these would all be individually wired, but I'm just really doing this to enjoy, not to think that it has to last. So it's going to be fine. And the things, I think, you know, things last much longer than we ever expect. I remember we did something once years ago with tulips, and they came back to the studio and they weren't in water, and we had them hanging around for a week and they still looked fine, and we'd been so worried that they were going to wilt. So here, some more box. That one's got a bit of new growth. As you can see, if you don't have all your ingredients ready beforehand, you're really going to get into trouble with these. You must spend a bit of time getting everything prepped, as the word goes, like a good cook. And you want to make sure that everything is cut to the right length. You don't want to be trying to cut things and take the leaves off. A bit more sage there. It's funny, for people who do natural flowers, you sometimes think this sort of thing is the antithesis of natural, because what are you doing? You're binding them within an inch of their lives. You're not thinking very much about making them flow. But actually, I think it's like botanical art. You look at them so closely, you try to work out where they should be, you look at different aspects of them, you turn the leaves, examine them. You get lovely touches like this Daphne. And you look at it and you think, where's the prettiest side of that? I'm going to put that there. I mean, it is an extraordinary, it's almost an art form, actually. Not that I'm saying I'm an art expert, but it is a form of art making these. More box. Box is a great thing. It's such a tough foliage, and it, like stoicism, which it represents, it is very tough. It keeps coming back. It keeps it, if you put it in something like this, you can sort of guarantee it's not going to behave badly. And so another bit of string. I assure you this fiddle with the string is worth it. I tried doing it with one row and it was very, very difficult. So you can see this is coming together very nicely. I like it. A bit more sage. At this point you should be looking, because I'm quite halfway, you should be looking at what you've got left and making sure that you're using things equally, that you're not over egging any particular barrels, and that there's plenty left for the barrels. The wind is getting up again. Everything's fine to blow away except the camera. It. Then I'm going to put in some more garlic flowers. They actually don't smell as strongly as garlic, it has to be said. Just as wild garlic doesn't taste as strongly as real garlic. So I don't even think they're the same family. Somebody who's out there would probably know the right answer to that. But I can't see all these tiny little bits of print with questions and things because I'd have to lean into the camera too much. At this stage, it's really nice to be able to have it flat on the surface like this, but you can turn it up and you can see it's getting there. And this sewing thing, I feel like I've gone back to being an ancient Egyptian when I do things like this, because I've never forgotten seeing those in the Cairo Museum and thinking, my goodness, what skill, what patience. Because in India where they make these incredible woven tied leis for brides and grooms, especially for brides and grooms to wear, and they're just phenomenal. The talent that is there in making those, and they're really stitched works of art. They're embroideries, tapestries. So I think I will never use wire again.
It's allium ursinum.
Oh, thank you. So it's a form of allium. Thank you, whoever said that. Robbie. I'm glad you're breaking your lunch break to see me, Robbie. Thank you. Robbie Honey live from South Africa. I'm nearly at the end now, which is nice for all of you. How are we doing time? Oh, we're doing all right. I don't know if I have to get off at a certain time. But more Lily of the Valley. I'm going to say the meanings again when I've finished it. But Lily of the Valley, the return of happiness, which is very important. And I don't know, when you see things like this, when you see these flowers bloom, you sometimes think nature's saying it's going to be all right. Because I actually think, I know that sounds a bit Miss World contestant-ish, but I do honestly think nature's got the answers. And indeed, nature probably is the reason that everything's gone slightly wrong, because we haven't treated it properly. And I do think she's got the answers. And when I saw these Lily of the Valley blooming in the garden, I thought, that has to be in the bouquet, because I was just going to do foliages. And then I saw the wild garlic and I thought, oh, do you know, protection, strength and protection. Really. I wish I could send this to a key worker.
You could send it to Liz.
I could send it to a key worker. That voice, I'm not here alone. I could send it to Liz as a thank you for working. I'm going to put some more of these lovely dandelions. As I say, dandelions symbolise a wish come true. The wish we have for continued health. For all those key workers who are working on the front line whilst we're all sitting at home making hair flower crowns. I mean, it does seem like a surreal life we all lead at the moment. But I do know, because I've had so many messages from people, I feel guilty every time I post a photograph saying this is me in my greenhouse, this is me in my garden, and people are saying, actually, we really like it. And it gives us comfort and it gives us a lot of pleasure just seeing nature So I think that's the thing that's going to come out of all of this. We're going to be more desperate for nature and hopefully desperate to protect it. So I'm nearly there, bear with. A bit more rosemary. And a bit more Daphne. I do like that idea. Consistency. I'll cut this off without cutting my hand again. Are you all bored? I can't see you here, so I can presume not.
Thank you, Shane, for your generosity and sharing. It's divine.
Oh, who's that?
That's Gail Smith-Cloud.
Hello, Gail. Oh, it's really helpful, actually, if you read out any messages. I can't see.
I'll read it if you don't mind.
Yeah. This is my wife, Candy, reading messages.
Robbie wants you to know it's Zimbabwe.
Oh, sorry, Robbie. I did the wrong accent. Well, I can't do it again.
Oh, the Dallows. So wonderful, Shane. Sending love from your farming neighbours.
Oh, thank you, Dallows. More garlic. I think we need lots of protection. A bit more of that to protect the protection. That's a good idea, actually, to read out the messages.
Well, Robbie's just said nope. I'm not sure what to.
Nope to my accent.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah. Or nope to the look of my garland. Maybe he doesn't like it.
No, I don't
Robbie,
so.
you've
No,
offended me.
things before.
It's very kind. Robbie, honey, is a great friend of mine who does flowers beautifully, and he is in not South Africa, he is in Zimbabwe.
And he said it's utterly gorgeous.
Making a plin, and he has interrupted his lunch specially to watch me, so I feel very honoured.
And he's saying nope to being bored.
Nope to being bored, or note.
That means he's not bored.
Great, well done, Robbie, thank you. I'm going to put in this little clump of lily of the valley. When you get to the end bit, which I am, you'll be glad to hear, I can tell you that there is a little fiddle to be done to make sure that you get the bit filled in and match it all up. And if you feel that that's too much for you, and you think this is ruining my pleasure of this, I would just leave it. And if you're a woman, put your hair over it. And if you're a man, say, I was never very good at this anyway. I think the last bit, if it's too much, don't worry. And there's nothing wrong, is what I would like to tell you. Because it's everyone, even people who have made headdresses all their lives, find that last little bit a bit of a challenge, especially when you run out of string. And then I believe I have to put this on my head, which is a new one. You could also, can I say, you could make this and put it around a hat, a sun hat. Any more questions or messages? I know I kind of got my...
People saying it's lovely, Shane.
Oh, that's nice. Well, I've got you to interpret.
From Father's Shed.
Oh, hello, Father's Shed. We've never met, but we know each other online.
Sending best wishes from Jonathan.
Ah, hello, Jonathan. I don't know which one, but nice.
At Garden Shed.
Oh, Jonathan, Garden Shed, sorry. Father's Shed.
Alison Hood probably said she wished you could get the smell.
I know. I think that's something that they have to invent in Instagram, smellogram, because this is a very nice... And you know what? It smells of nature. It doesn't smell of... it doesn't smell like a perfume shop, which sometimes flowers... Well, I can do. Most perfumes are based... Most scents are based on flowers. So, I think I'm finished. Miraculously. And happily.
Petal Foundry 100% biodegradable has just joined.
Well, this is 100% biodegradable. That is my revelation to me, because I always thought that I couldn't do this without some sort of wire, and now I can. Cut off the string. So I've done about 3 stitches at the end, and there it is. I'm not going to put it on, which might be less successful. How's that? I feel like Fiona from Electric Daisy Farm with this, but anyway, so it's completely biodegradable. I've got flowers left over. Oh, I didn't put in, I had got forget-me-nots. Forget-me-nots are the symbol of true love. They're also very short-lived, so it's probably a good thing I didn't put them in. But here you go. You've got a flower crown for the NHS and for all of us at this moment. And basically it says, be stoic with the books. It's offering health and protection with the sage for a long life, with the garlic for protecting you from vampires, but protecting you in life. The lovely little dandelions.
Iona loves it.
Thank you, Iona, my lovely darling Iona niece.
Says Gemma.
And these, Lily of the Valley, the return of happiness. So this has got a message, and that's what flowers can do, and that's what gardens can do. They can comfort you, they can give a message. I urge you on Sunday the 10th to make a flower crown and put one thing in it that will remind you and make you feel that you've given a message. Rosemary for remembrance, sage for a long and happy life, dandelions for a wish come true. Any of these things. Box for stoicism. And I'm going to get this to Liz tonight. And wild garlic, that was the one I said for protection as well. I can hardly see on this actually. It feels like I've caught my head in a shrub. But anyway, thank you very much for joining me. And thank you for being a great audience with all these lovely comments. Bye-bye. Oh, but Iona's going to try and make her own. Well done, Iona. I want to see a photograph. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, get photos from all of them.
Didn't know how to stop.